So likes on social media, impressions on social media can be a bit, we call them kind of vanity metrics. They make you feel good, but do they really mean anything in the big sense of the word? Not necessarily. And so what are the metrics that are most important to you, and how consistently are you checking on those and making sure that they're actionable? If you see that something's down, can you actually act on that to help improve it? Then you know it's a good metric. If you see it like impressions and there's not really anything you can do or control related to improving it, then you know it's probably not a good metric to measure.
Welcome to Beyond Clean with ACE. In the world of commercial cleaning, newcomers and seasoned professionals know we're more than just toilets, windows, and floors. We're just like everyone else with diverse interests in everything. And over the past 7 seasons, tens of thousands have discovered engaging, thoughtful, and truly game-changing knowledge here. Whether you're a facility manager, a frontline staff member, or a building services contractor, we're here to help you grow both personally and professionally. So hit that subscribe button and share with others, because we're all about enhancing lives in healthy, positive, and proactive ways. Now let's join Dave Thompson, Director of the Academy of Cleaning Excellence, your host here at Beyond Clean with ACE.
Well, good morning, everyone. This is Dave Thompson, and as you can see, we are here talking about Beyond Clean with ACE. We don't talk about cleaning all the time, but that's most generally what we talk about. We're working in the conversation some way or the other. I don't know about you, but whew, it's November. That means cold is coming to some people, but you know what? Here in Florida, what can I say? Hey, I got my bright colored shirt on. I'm ready for, well, what maybe some of you aren't. Anyway, I'm not going to just be the only one to talk about, hey, it's been a while since we talked to each other on the podcast here or on YouTube, but don't want to end the year without saying hello and maybe even goodbye, because this might be the last time you hear from me. I have no idea. But help me out, Mickey, because I don't want to talk by myself all the time. They're probably going, is he just going to rattle on today?
I love to talk, so that will not be a problem.
Everybody welcome Mickey Anderson. Mickey, it's been a while since we've talked, and if somebody hasn't heard from you, let's start with who are we, what do we do, and why are we talking today?
Hello. Yes, my name is Mickey Anderson. I'm a marketing strategist, and I help B2B companies just like the cleaning industry set up marketing, drive demand, and just keep their clients longer with really simple strategies. So I'm here to chat all things cleaning industry and marketing.
Hey, you know what, Mickey? I want to kind of start out today. I mean, here we are, and I say the end of the year because we probably won't talk next month, everything going on and all. So for you and me, this is probably our last time this year. I got to looking back. Do you realize that we first had our first conversation in July of 22? I
know. It's been a wild ride.
This is the third ending of the year we're talking. And, something I don't know about you or other people that you work with, but I was looking at, I don't hear from people in the cleaning industry. And I'm looking at, is anybody out there paying attention? 670 downloads last month in October. Thank you, folks, for doing that. But am I the only one that feels this way?
Not at all. My goodness. No, engagement's tough. Getting people to say nice things about you on the internet, it's literally a whole strategy of its own. So you can get the initial downloads and people to consume your content, but how do you get them to engage and have conversations and relay their feelings about that content? That's really the art and science afterwards. So we can definitely chat about some strategies there, but you are not alone. B2B in general, very quiet. So we have to be super strategic and tactful in how we're getting engagement from our audiences.
So in other words, if we're talking in a cleaning entrepreneur is listening today, and I get a lot of new businesses. I mean, that just seems to be what's coming in this year. A lot of new entrepreneurs. How do they keep from getting discouraged with all of this?
Well, I think that if you're tracking your metrics, that's really important. So throwing things out there and hoping for the best, looking for comments or likes, isn't really going to be super helpful for you. Those are typically lagging. So we're looking for some leading metrics that'll show you, okay, the work that I'm doing is leading somewhere. It's helping me see that we're going to see some results in the future, and then some lagging. And so for you, you're going to get those downloads, but then what happens after that? Are you seeing an increase in traffic on your website? Are you seeing an increase in sales? And so you have to map it out and consistently look there. And also knowing what is important. So likes on social media, impressions on social media can be a bit, we call them kind of vanity metrics. They make you feel good, but do they really mean anything in the big sense of the word? Not necessarily. And so what are the metrics that are most important to you, and how consistently are you checking on those and making sure that they're actionable? If you see that something's down, can you actually act on that to help improve it? Then you know it's a good metric. If you see it like impressions and there's not really anything you can do or control related to improving it, then you know it's probably not a good metric to measure.
I think that's probably one of the hard things to do, especially us in the cleaning industry. We're entrepreneurs, we do so many things, and it's not like unlike any other business, I'm sure. But I hear entrepreneurs go all the time in this industry, just let me do cleaning. But running a cleaning business is much more, and this is where we're at today.
Yeah, it's a part of the business game. If you're not marketing, if you're not tackling all those kind of other pieces of running a business, then you are going to struggle to grow and compete in this day and age. That's really what sets the small shops that stay small compared to those that grow consistently. It's because they're pushing the boundaries on all those pieces.
I was in Colorado this last week making some presentations to actually a place I've been doing business with for a decade. And, some of the people were new, and they got to looking at all the different things we do here at the Academy. And they say, how do you do all that? How does an entrepreneur do all of this?
Well, at first you will do the majority of it, but I think the key to success in entrepreneurship is bringing in, we call it the who, not how problem. So it's not necessarily how you solve a problem, it's who you bring in to solve that problem that makes all the difference as you grow. And so bringing in people who can fill in gaps and tackle tasks and help you grow, that's going to be really important. And ideally, when we're growing our team, we're bringing in people who can actually help drive that top line revenue growth, who can help build and grow the company, not just bringing in additional operating expenses as you grow.
So I'm thinking, here we are in November of 2024. I know how I do things. I plan for next year almost totally, but I don't think that's the common way.
No, especially not in this industry. Most people are reactive. They play quarter by quarter at best. But I absolutely recommend having a big picture vision or view of what your year will be. It will absolutely change, right? We all know that saying that like a plan is useless, but the art of planning or the time spent planning is invaluable. And I think that's really true. So taking time to map out your year, what are your peak seasons? What are your low seasons? What events do you have? What's happening? Being able to look at that from a big picture, kind of 35,000 foot view, and then break it down into your quarters and targets, it's just going to help you have a much better, more proactive sense of your company, the challenges you might face, the opportunities you might have, and where you should focus, as opposed to hitting January 1st and going, oh goodness, we're down in sales and it's 2 weeks into the year. What are we going to do? I recommend sitting back and actually starting your annual planning like now into early December at the latest, because you need time to be able to not just map it out, but think about it, have that white space to plan and organize your thoughts, and then come back to your team and start action planning for what Q1 is going to look like for you.
Now, folks, if you're listening to the podcast today, thank you very much. If you're watching us on YouTube, we appreciate that as well. I can only talk about what we do here. And one of the things that I got caught up with last year is always feeling like I was lagging behind. So I have already scheduled 3 months of posts into March of next year on LinkedIn. Is scheduling that far out advisable, or do you, or I guess I'm just saying, hey, I've done it. Should I not have?
Oh, no, that's fantastic. So we recommend about 2 months of a buffer in terms of we call it your bread and butter social media. So if you're posting or creating content, you've got a typical flow that you're going through. You're not reinventing the wheel. It's not timely. It's not, necessarily related to a specific event that happened. It's just your general educational or general nurture content that you can schedule out as far out as you'd like. We recommend about 2 months, 3 months, maybe, if you can do that. Any further than that, oftentimes your business will shift or change, and then it's harder to rework all. If you're way too far out in advance, that can be a lot of rework. So 2 to 3 months gives you a good buffer, and then being able to come in and add timely and relevant and specific additional content when it happens. You're not going to be still catching up with the general stuff. You've got that taken care of. Now you can be more focused and strategic. And how are we going to add additional pieces? What are we going to put in here when this event happens, or post-election, or whatever it is that's timely for you? How can you address that on social media or in your platforms?
Well, I guess I should have been a little bit more specific then, because what we hear at Jim and the Academy here, we already have like 17 different showcases that are planned with event dates and locations, everything. And then we have the educational showcases for the Academy. All of these are, as you said, timely and scheduled. And we just posted, as I said, scheduled all of these dates with specific things for them. I guess we're going kind of the backwards way. We're not posting the general stuff. We're posting the event date stuff.
Well, that's okay, because you know them in advance and they're not going to necessarily change. And so if it's set, if it's organized, if you've got all the pieces you need to do it in advance, absolutely go ahead and do it in advance. And that can be for events or any of those pieces. But I also think it's important to look at the other content that you could be posting as well, because it's usually the stuff that gets forgotten. We've got the big timely events and those pieces, which take up the majority of our focus, but then our ongoing nurture stuff, so the educational pieces or just general LinkedIn posts, get forgotten. And then what ends up happening is the quantity or consistency of posting drops and spikes. And that tells the algorithm that you're not fully engaged on the platform. And so you won't see as many impressions on those timely posts. And so it is important. There is a numbers game at play here with social media algorithms. So we do want to be consistent across the board. Right. So that's typically why we say making sure you have those kind of just general bread and butter, and then the timely pieces. So what you can do now that you've got those pieces in place is go back and say, okay, what can I look at for the next 2 months to fill in the gaps, and get that done in advance as well. And then you'll be miles ahead of everyone.
Well, that's not going to be a problem, because I've got all kinds of classes already set up for next year. I just got to post them all now.
There you go.
Hey, I know whenever we were talking about doing this and everything, and this was like 3 months ago, I know my boss said, "Do you think you can handle all of this next year?" I said, "Hey, we'll schedule it, and if we can't, we can't, but it's going to be out there." I think that's kind of where everything is moving so fast these days.
Yeah, it is. It is. And you need to be ahead of the game. I think a lot of people underestimate the amount of planning and effort things take. And so we show up to a date saying, oh goodness, I haven't done any of this work. We end up slammed. And then we have our additional daily tasks and things we have to take care of on top of it. So it just gets pushed back. So I think that the more forward thinking we can be, and the more we can delegate out those pieces or organize those pieces that need to be tackled in advance, the better prepared we are. It's much easier to, pull something away than it is to add additional things in. So if you can plan it out in advance and get those set up, it's easier to cancel an event that you had pre-planned than it is to add in an additional event that you hadn't planned.
It's so funny that you say that, Mickey, and I smile only because I had some people that earlier a couple months ago said, well, I saw that was on your calendar, an event, a class, but when I went to sign up, it was gone. I said, you should have registered early because something else came in, and it's exactly it. An event that was planned had to be canceled because, well, somebody wanted me right there then.
That's it. So, and I think that also speaks to the urgency that we can push on people to register early for things or to be aware of things in advance. If we say, hey, if we don't get this number of registrants by this date, this event may be canceled. That will tell someone, oh goodness, okay, I should probably get my foot in the door now as opposed to waiting until later.
Do you see much of that kind of scenario happening? I mean, we we get inundated with social media with so many activities and so many things going on. You can only fit so much in.
It's true, but I think social media is only one piece of the puzzle. And
Okay.
most people, so if we're thinking from the audience's perspective, I'm
Right.
probably not planning out my events for the whole year that far in advance personally, right? And I think most people are like that. They'll look a couple months in advance and think about, oh, I want to go to this or I want to go to that.
Unless it's a vacation to Florida.
That is correct. A vacation to anywhere, in my opinion. But social media, we have to remember, social media can't be your primary place to engage and remind people of your events. Algorithms make it really hard to ensure that the right people see your posts. You can't even confirm that the right people have seen your posts all the time. And so we have to have another way to communicate with these people. And email goes direct to the person. They see it. You can see if they've opened it. You can see if they've clicked on it. It's just a much better, more direct channel for things like events. And so if you're only relying on social media to promote your events and your timely pieces, you're missing a massive opportunity with email marketing. Social media is new eyes, engagement, fun. Email is direct to a person that you've engaged with previously. They've opted in, they've raised their hand and said they're interested, and that's how we're going to get them to take action.
So should the message, as you wanted to talk about this, should the message be exactly the same on the social media as the email?
It can be, doesn't have to be. I mean, I think it just depends. I think most people don't want to be inundated with the exact same things here and there, and small minor tweaks can make a big difference. Adding a person's name and then having the same contact can honestly make something feel very different. So it can be very similar, if not the same. It doesn't have to be per se, but if you're stuck on time and you don't have the capacity to do more, then do what you can. And if it's duplicating or the same message via email and social, then so be it.
Yeah, and as you're talking about social, as a business, we think LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
Facebook is, there's a business side of Facebook. Or is this, and we're here on YouTube today, I'm sure. With everything new that has happened and all of the, I even hate to mention it in a way, AI, what is new for 25? Are we looking at something different, or are we just talking about just using the same old stuff?
Well, I think there's always going to be new on top of it. But the most important thing for anyone listening is to really just understand who it is you're trying to target. If you know your user, if you know your ideal client, then you probably already know what you need to do. You know where they're going to be hanging out. You know what content they're consuming and where. You know what events you should be going to in order to get in front of those people. So there's not going to be a significant change there. It's going to be optimizing what you've already got, just making it better. If you don't know who your audience is, or you're expanding to new markets, that's when we start to see new and testing in different platforms. But for most cleaning organizations, especially corporate or commercial, we're looking at LinkedIn. We're looking at YouTube, ideally, occasionally Facebook as additional touch points. But most people on Facebook are not looking for businesses per se. It's a different intent. So that can be educational and fun content. And of course, email. But it's not going to be massive shifts or changes. I think those will happen for sure. But it's about staying true to what works for your consumer, your client, sticking and optimizing on that, being really consistent there. That will honestly push you so much further than jumping on every new trend that comes out or trying every new social platform that comes out. Do one thing, do it really, really well. Own it, make sure that you've got it nailed, create the process and the system for it, and then you can add on additional pieces where you can play because you've already got this one nailed. If you're trying to uncover two different strategies at the same time, it becomes very, very, very challenging.
Mickey, over the last probably year and a half, you and I have talked this issue quite a lot, but AI seems to be the butt of almost every problem nowadays. It's AI's fault. Is that just the way I'm seeing things, or do you feel the same?
I don't feel the same. I think AI is a tool. Whether you know how to swing the hammer or not is up to you, right? Whether you've got the nail in front of you or a screw, again, that will tell you. So I don't think AI is the problem per se. I think it's how we're using it and what we're using it for that makes all the difference. So if you're relying on AI to solve problems, that's probably not going to happen. You're still going to need to understand what you're using it for, why you're using it, how you're using it, what you're going to measure success for, or what quality assurance points you're going to have in. Those sorts of pieces never change. The AI is just one of the many tools you can leverage. So I don't think it's the problem per se. I think it's a tool, and if you know how to use it properly, or you're learning how to use it properly, it can actually be a great advantage to you.
You know, I was doing, like I said, I was in Colorado doing this, and I was listening to some of the comments as we were going through the different generations, which is a whole nother game. But it was interesting when somebody said, well, you know, this new AI thing, I go, you know what, if you use GPS, you've been using AI for a long time.
It's not new. I think it's just become, it's kind of like the PC, right? If we think back to the history of computers and the internet, it started off with a very few small pieces and very specific use cases that had access to it and used it and learned it. And now it's got obviously a much broader reach. Everyone has a personal computer. Everyone's got the internet nowadays. So
yeah, it's usually right there in your hand.
Exactly. Like I think the AI is very similar. It's been used in very specific use cases for very specific markets for quite some time now. It's just expanding to new markets and new opportunities right now, just like all those other things. There's always going to be hiccups and issues when we get access to it, like general public gets access to a really powerful tool. We learn as we go. So I don't think it's any different. I think it's just now everyone has access to it, whereas before they didn't.
We're just watching another thing, another entity, if you will, grow up.
Exactly.
And you know what I think interesting as you're saying that, one of the things that I had taught in this class, and I'm going to be teaching next year quite a bit, is generational communication. Yeah. And I look back at the different generations, and in that class of people last week, we had all 5 generations that are in the workforce. And it was real interesting when I started breaking down how much of each generation that we've now identified actually contributed. And you said internet. Hey, folks, I'm a baby boomer. I am very proud that I'm still here and made it this long. And my generation brought about the internet that is what everybody uses today. Everybody brings something to the table.
Yeah, it's so true. And I think this is actually a good reminder as you talk about generational communication. It's a good reminder that old school styles of communication can still be highly effective. You know, mailers, for example, we still get mailers and coupons in our mail all the time. And I don't know about you, but I definitely read them and check them, and it brings awareness to things that I otherwise wouldn't. It also helps local businesses get visibility. And so I think, you know, we forget sometimes with these new technologies, email, social media, algorithms, ads, that sometimes the simplest thing, putting a mailer in somebody's letterbox, can have a massive impact on your growth, especially as a local business. So it's important to understand your consumer, who they are, how they consume, and what works for them, and really drive home on that.
Well, when you say that, I was looking at our workforce, because in the cleaning industry, that's usually our biggest challenge is the workforce. Mm-hmm. And when I started looking at this for them, it basically broke down right now as about a third in my group, about a third, a little bit more is in Generation X and Generation Y. But these 3 groups make up 90% of the workforce. I also believe that's also 90% of the consumers.
Yeah, absolutely. You'll have a bunch of different markets and people and roles, and it will shift and change. And so it's really important to just understand that, you know, year over year, we have to evaluate who our consumer is, who's the buyer, who is the person that we're trying to influence, what do they look like, what's their role, what's their title, what's their age. The more you know about them, the better you'll be able to communicate with them.
And so here at the end of the year, as we're planning for next year, these are very important factors.
Absolutely. I recommend at least twice a year, if possible more than that, to really reevaluate who your ideal customers are, go deep, send out surveys to your existing clients to learn more about them, not just the quality of service or their satisfaction levels, but about them as a person, right? So if you can go back to that buyer and say, hey, tell me about yourself, or we can do some sort of profiling within our organization to learn more about our consumers, we can use that moving forward. But that's data we typically have. we just do nothing with, because it takes a little bit of manual effort and, gumption to get that collected, but you can use it to make a massive impact in your marketing and in your business growth.
So I'm going to come to you and Mickey Anderson and your website and your group, the high and the low, if you will, the challenge and the success, if you will, from your side.
It's been a big year, lots going on. I think the market is, obviously, I think a lot of people are talking about the economy right now. We're up in Canada, but we work a lot in the US, and the market and current economy is a very big challenge that a lot of people are facing. I think that the big shifts that we saw, we got way smarter with who our consumer was. We got better at targeting. We got more specific, and we actually cut down on the number of services that we offered over the course of the year as well, which was actually really big for us. It helped increase profit margins. So more isn't always better. Sometimes less, but better is better.
Well, I think that is actually true, because as we said before we got on the air, folks, I was looking at how many podcasts we did, and you have to evaluate how much time you spend on something and the ROI, which is something we all should be doing. And we've only done 14 this year versus normally we're in the high 30s, but yet we've done other things. And I think this is where we all have to look and adjust and know our client. There, you're right.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you'll start to learn your magic numbers, as we like to call them. So if it's for podcasts, for example, in order to get peak downloadership, is it the number of podcasts we're releasing, the frequency? Is it the topics that we're covering? Is it the guests that we have that creates influence? And then how do we map that out and leverage ongoing data to make sure that we're continually learning and getting better at it? If it's for example, our sales, how many leads do we need to be reaching out for in order to get a booking, in order to get a closed deal? What does that look like in cost? How do we map that out and test? But it's just having these kind of hypotheses and then testing against them over the course of the year. That's how we learn and grow. I think thinking you have the answers or making big assumptions is a dangerous game to play, especially in this kind of tight economy.
Biggest success for this year?
Biggest success for this year, I think it's more personal than it is professional. My husband's
okay.
My husband's retiring from the military at the end of the year this year, which is massive. He joined the military when he was 18 and is retiring out, and we're just really, really excited for this next chapter. So that's really our big accomplishment this year.
That is great to hear, because I know that will, and I'm sure your daughter's going to be happier with him at home.
Excuse me. Yes, she's already thrilled to have him home more. So yeah, it's going to be a really fantastic next stage for us.
Let's see, if I remember, isn't there some kind of a trip to Vegas that usually happens this time of the year?
It's coming up, a couple weeks. Yes, we're going to Vegas for the Nationals Finals Rodeo again this year, beginning of December. I cannot wait.
Yeah, I almost, I was like, I'm sorry, folks, we've been doing this for a while, as you can tell. And I'm like, I expected Mickey to have her hat ready for today, but I guess I was.
Yes, I've got boots on, if that counts.
Ah, yes. All right, good. All right. Getting into the spirit already. That's it.
Always. Yeah, it's our favorite annual trip. We head to the Nationals Finals Rodeos in Vegas, and it's just a riot. We have a good time.
And I think that's something that you have to. I know that we're talking a lot of business today, Mickey, and I'm so glad you brought the personal thing into it, because, at the end of all of it, we do have to think about the reason we're really doing all of this.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of my favorite books is Simon Sinek's Start With Why, and I think it's a personal endeavor for us. We become entrepreneurs, we start businesses, we run businesses and work for a reason. And it's usually not live to work, it's usually work to live. So knowing what are your big milestones, your big goals personally. I'm a big fan of bucket lists. One of my mentors is huge in bucket lists and setting those up. And so I think just knowing your why helps you prioritize, but B, kind of figure things out and keep a more positive approach throughout the challenges and the highs.
So then, with the husband going to be around more often next year, yes. What's going to be on next year's bucket list then?
Next year's bucket list, well, lots of travel for sure, but some pretty exciting growth and career progressions for myself. I'm really excited to be able to focus more my husband's career, obviously in the military, lots of travel, lots of deployment. So his career has usually taken the lead. So it's an exciting time for us to make this shift, for him to be home and for me to dig into work.
And I kind of was thinking, I was talking to some people, and I remembered you're doing more travel now that he's going to be home.
Yes, lots more travel for myself, but also as a family. So it'll be fun. I'm all for bringing the family along on work trips whenever possible, turning work trips into work/personal whenever I can. So that's just an opportunity.
Balanced, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I don't think work-life balance is a thing. I think it's just all smushed together, and you do your best with what you got. So I know that evening meetings happen, and I also have bedtime and bath time to tackle with my little one and those sorts of things. So you just do the best you can. Everyone knows you're human, and it all blends together beautifully.
Where are you? Where is there a specific place for next year that you really?
We are doing a Disney cruise, which is really exciting. Our second Disney cruise. We're very excited for that. We're going to be traveling around the U.S. a little bit, probably down south a bit too, and then potentially a Europe trip. But we're still mapping it out.
Very good. So what do you see? What is the and I always like to look at what my challenge for next year. What is that challenge? Do you have one of those identified?
Well, I think there's a lot of uncertainty in the world right now, especially related to the U.S., right? You have an election coming up tomorrow.
Right.
And so I think and this is a cycle, right? And it is what it is. We have elections every couple of years. Like it shifts, but people typically put themselves on hold in times like this. They take a holding position until there's more certainty, and then they'll take action. Right now is a contingency planning. And so I see once we're kind of through this phase of hold, I think next year is going to be a lot of movement, a lot of activity, a lot of distractions. And so most organizations are going to have the challenge of there's a lot going on. How do we focus and prioritize? And I think that's going to be across industries, across the board, making sure that in order to compete and stand out, it's really knowing your lane, your consumer, your plan, and owning that. Being adaptable, of course, being very, very focused is going to be the most important thing, I think, in 2025.
Folks, as we're drawn to the close of our podcast for today, I think it's interesting how you bring a vision to what's happening in the U.S. is affecting your country and yours. This I talked to some people in Europe, and they're kind of waiting to see what happens as well.
Yeah, depending on where you're at. So in some industries in the world, it's business as usual. There's not as much of an economic impact, but the U.S. does. There's a ripple effect to the actions that take place in the U.S. and across the globe. And so I think it's just being aware that, the world is moving and turning, and we have to do the best we can with what we have. But yeah, I think next year there's going to be a lot going on, and those who stay focused and well prioritized are going to be the ones that succeed.
Well, I view it as a lot of challenge, but I also view it as a lot of opportunity. And yes. I've always been one, and it goes back to one of the things we were teaching this past week. In the cleaning industry, a lot of people say, "Oh, they have a complaint." And I said, "No, that is not a complaint. That's an issue. Your job is to take that issue and make an opportunity out of it." And I think that's just the way I'm looking at this next year. I just look at it as it's going to be a lot of opportunity. It's just dependent on how I react to it.
Absolutely. I mean, if you think of any big business or any big shift that's happened, it's out of a problem, right? No successful business happens out of nice times and everyone being happy. Like that's not the way that it works. Our job is to solve problems and create opportunities out of that solution. It's not to hope for the best and make everyone happy. And so I think it's being aware of these potential challenges that your market will face, and then being ahead of the game. Okay, how are we going to solve this and position ourselves in advance and use that as an opportunity to move forward? That's going to be the key.
Now, folks, if you've been listening to us all of this time and everything, there is Mickey's website. Please go up and I got to tell you this, and it's not just because you're on, but I was looking at this. I'm like, what has been the #1 podcast year over year? The ones that reach the top. And folks, I got to tell you, you're looking right at her. She's at the top every year. So
Oh,
please go to Mickey Anderson, HeyMickeyAnderson.com. Go there, find out what she's got to offer. You know, people ask me about some advice, and I go, just go to the podcast, check out Mickey. There's plenty of podcasts there. Listen to her, not me.
I appreciate that. I think the biggest compliment that the listeners or the viewers could give us is, if you're watching on YouTube, leave a thumbs up and a comment. You know, let us know what topics you want us to cover next, or if you have any questions or comments. And then if you're listening to the podcast, go ahead and give Dave a 5-star review. Right? That's it.
You know, and I think that's what we started today with, was just give us some response. We're simply here to help you folks. And, you know, here we are. Like you said, Mickey, we can rattle on forever.
It's true.
But we're going to shut it off for today. Thank you, folks, for listening to us for another time. As Mickey said, you know, please like and share. That's the only way this happens. That's what we're here for. Mickey, have a good end of the year, and we'll talk to you in January.
Sounds great. You too. Thanks, everyone.